Yeah, so according to the schedule, I finished 10 minutes ago, so that was a great talk. So, I attended the Apple Developer Conference last week, and that's going to inform a lot of the stuff I talk about right now, because I think it's very relevant to what we're doing. Almost everything we've talked about has mentioned Apple in some way, so hopefully that comes through. And I want to talk a lot about like foundations, right? Because we're building new things, we have all these new options, so that's kind of like the theme of the talk. So, as Julie mentioned, I'm in the Deloitte digital practice, so when you try to go to somebody and you say, not only am I not an auditor, I'm not even like a regular consultant, I'm a guy who makes mobile apps in my background. So I come from a disparate background doing, I used to work at the Institute for Systems Biology, for those of you who are involved in that space. So I worked on the Human Genome Project, a lot of early microarray work, led a lot of the protein folding, a lot of high throughput genetic studies, a lot of bioinformatics stuff. So I come from a very obvious, background to doing mobile development that I do now. And as part of Deloitte Digital, I focus on not only development but also on a lot of the back-end work, the infrastructure, these large-scale systems that we're talking about. I do a lot of work with our consumer products group, where like when we're talking here about the master data record and these systems, I do that for other, not healthcare, but we're doing a project in automotive where I'm in the process of trying to unify 4 or 5 different systems, each of which has their own login, their own name. So it's a problem that we see in a lot of different industries that we solve a lot. And it's something you have to carry over to your mobile device as well. People have very high expectations of their mobile devices, and they want to see that. We've done, Deloitte Digital's work for the American Heart Association. We built the Everybody Walk application for the conjunction with our friends at Kaiser. So in terms of actually, tracking your steps, how much energy you're burning doing that. And Deloitte's been heavily involved in the Kentucky health system, among others, in terms of the health exchanges. So I've had an opportunity to talk to folks in our federal practice around how we're doing that, bringing some of our user experience background to some of these successful practices that have actually launched these exchanges. At the bottom, I've highlighted some of my non-health clients. So we've talked today a lot about making things consumer grade, which I think is something that's important, especially when you come to enterprise, when you talk about mobility for folks in your own corporations having these expectations. So we've done all of the mobile apps for Target on Android, iPad, iPhone. We do a lot of work for Intel on the website. We've done all of the mobile apps for Showtime, including the ones on the new Amazon Fire TV, whatever they call it. So a lot of different devices, a lot of different channels. And also for Fox Sports, we built the iPad site to stream the Super Bowl. So lots of different things in technology and media, but they all everything kind of looks the same to some extent, right? So when we start talking about whether I'm pulling health data or I'm pulling Showtime data, for the mobile device, it's all about how do you make that optimized, how do you make it that operation seamless. Some of the things that Lola's talk brought up were shocking to me, that there's not a better interface, and that the nurses have. I saw one of the things you called out where 50% of the people thought that this one aspect of entering nursing data was hard. It's like, why is it so hard? Could they not figure that out? Could they not talk to the people and look for a better solution? So I think there's a lot of things that we can take from what we're doing in consumer practice and bring it into healthcare. My favorite quote from the Apple conference last week was from Horace Duke, who's one of the analysts on it, saying that it was a cement conference cheered by cement enthusiasts, but leaving artificial digest writers in the dark, right? So a lot of things that Apple talked about were very kind of esoteric and very developer focused. There was a lot of new technologies, there was a new programming language, there was all these things that were catered specifically to the developer audience. And so I'm going to talk through some of those and hopefully bring through what some of the business value that those are, so that I can make it less cement and more architecture. At the same time, the comments around that, and what I hope you kind of take away is Apple's really gone in a new direction last week, and they kind of showed their new stripes, as it were. Much more open, much more allowing us as developers, as vendors of software, as people who work their software, to access parts of the system we couldn't do before. So I've heard a number of things where it's like we can't access this, or we can't store the data here, or we can't provide this thing, or whatever it is. And if in the next year, if somebody tries to tell you they can't do something, I would say, go and ask them again until they say yes, because they should be able to do it. There's so much more available that everything we're talking about, all these great systems, tying things together, allowing access, having better security, even as far as indoor positioning. So we talk about hospitals, like how do we actually access where we're walking around, how do we do device management, how do we make use of these things? Lots more things that we're looking for. So I have kind of 4 things I was going to talk about today. We'll see how many we get through. So starting with defining mobile, right? So a few years ago, the iPhone came out, and I think Willie made this point that all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, I have this phone that I've never seen before, but it's easier to use than my flip phone that I've had for 10 years. So like, what was it about that made it so much easier to use, and how come we're struggling with that? So the fact that the iPhone came out gave rise to what we talk about as the mobile first movement. So when we talk about, especially like in things up here today, around some of the challenges you have in healthcare, the challenges you have in making interfaces people want to use that are easy to use, the solution that we take when we work with clients on applications on the web or for mobile devices is we think about mobile first, mostly because it constrains what we can do. So if you think about somebody who needs to enter in the patient care information or the testing information or whatever it is, by thinking about your mobile device and making something that can work there, instead of saying, oh, well, I have a checkbox here, and then I'll go over here and do that, you're forced to really prioritize what's important, right? So you think about the data that you need, that you're trying to collect, that you're trying to share, even when it comes down to what we were talking just a few minutes ago around how do you bring in these different data collection points. If you take that highly prioritized view, that mobile first view, you quickly get to an interface that is simpler, but actually works for people. And so that's something that we try to carry on, and we're now you have this responsive web movement that's carrying that forward. So originally we had the iPhone, and then we started getting more devices. Android came on the scene, the iPad, and it's very configurous. The iPad Mini and whatnot. You get all these different sizes of things, and then all of a sudden you have all kinds of connected devices. So now we're talking about this Internet of Things. We're talking about accessing stuff on your refrigerator, which it's kind of a joke at the same time when it comes to the healthcare industry in terms of like tracking what you're buying, what you have involved. I think there's actually a very good use case there. We've done a number of projects in our studio in Seattle for the wearables movement, so around Google Glass and others. So we talk about people being able to I might be the expert in something, but I can't be there in person. But by using a wearable technology, I can actually, I can guide you through the process. You can look at it, you can see, you can make that call. And we've done that for a client in oil drilling, where people can do inspections and have a highly specialized, machine worker who can't be on site everywhere, but can have somebody go and kind of be their hands and eyes in order for doing those inspections. I think that's something that's highly relevant, especially when it comes to telemedicine, some in-home care solutions, and having people make these unqualified. I wouldn't trust myself to make a blood measurement, but if somebody was watching me do it, maybe I'd be more trusting in terms of what that data looks like. And of course, also the other various wristbands, monitoring the temperature of your home, information from your car. And I would also say that there's a desktop machine there as well. We call ourselves Deloitte Digital, not Deloitte Mobile, because everything that we're doing in mobile is really digital. It extends to all of these different channels. So we've heard a lot of talk about what your backend data system looks like, how it works together, and I try to plan for everything on the page, right? I want to be building if I build a mobile app, I'm thinking about how to build a website, I'm thinking about how to build the refrigerator app for it. I want to make sure these APIs we're talking about, these access points, are something that can go across any channel that we might think about and make sure the data is collected and it's able to be accessed. So very generally, I have infrastructure, I have mobile, I have web, it's just an application. And that's really, the takeaway point. We had our discussion earlier today kind of about data, and I made this kind of flip comment that just, why can't you guys just give me a single API? Like, figure out your master data. I don't care, right? And but to some extent, that's how I have to be from the mobile app. Like, I can only do so many, the processes are getting faster, but at the same time, every time I have to go and process and deduplicate information on the phone, means that's like 5 extra minutes you can't talk, your battery's dying, right? So as a mobile app developer, being a good citizen on that computing power, can I push back to the cloud so I can have a good battery life? How can I do things to make sure that my